Hey guys, welcome to a new video. We're going to look at the hidden buffs and nerfs of the new patch. So there's a lot of stuff that didn't get like a direct change, kind of under the radar, that is now going to be stronger or weaker. Before we get this video started, I've teamed up with Opinion Outpost to sponsor this video and get you some free RP. Plus we've got $25 of RP to give away on this video as well. I've been on there a few times. It's a site that lets you get RP cards or cash, other gift cards for free just by answering surveys about stuff that's relevant to you, like helping them kind of improve their products and stuff. You can find a link down below. It's pretty cool with League just because of the queue times and champion select and stuff. Like you can legit fill them in while you're waiting around doing nothing else. Go and check the link in the description box anyway to start earning that extra RP, but leave a comment, like the video if you do, to enter to win the $25 of RP. Now, one of the biggest buffs was to Sindhulk, I think, this patch, right? Now up to 20% bonus health. I don't think I really need to explain how busted that is with Gargoyle Stone Plate, doubling your health total and Locket scaling with that shield. One of the less obvious things that actually does is basically kill assassins or make their lives like a lot harder. Number one, tanks are good against assassins because they can stack armor or magic resist and not be killed. Like even if they do die, the assassin would have to use their cooldowns and a lot of time. If they do that, they can't really use it on anybody else, and that's kind of when you tie worth in all chat. Number two, tanks normally have a lot of crowd control, and what's an assassin's number one counter? Crowd control. So they can't kill stuff and they get burst down. Number three, Locket. If you manage to get past that tank, if you avoid the crowd control, great. Now you've got to get through a 3000 health shield on the AD carry. Unless you really hate yourself that much, I don't think you really want to put yourself through that. In my opinion, champions like Yasuo, LeBlanc, Zed, Fizz, those kind of champions will probably have their win rate drop this patch, and the sad thing is there isn't really much you can do about it. In games without tanks, it doesn't really apply. If you snowball super hard, again, doesn't really apply. So at least there's kind of a way around it. Also, by the way, not really from these changes, but Malzahar mid is pretty broken again right after the recent buffs. I think he's actually got the number one win rate right now anyway for mid lane, but his ultimate is like the ultimate shutdown on an assassin, right? A point and click, so not even the worst player can miss that. It locks you down and it does damage as well. So with him becoming more popular, that's even worse for assassins. In a nutshell, if you pick somebody like Yasuo or LeBlanc or Zed against a Malzahar, you'll lose on average 60% of the time. That feels pretty bad. Now, kind of related, but the next thing, one I think actually will be the biggest surprise this patch, is Maokai. He got tiny buffs, but it's not about those at all, to be honest. It's all about the hidden buffs that he got at the same time. Maokai's actually had a good win rate for the past few patches, past two patches. I say good, it's like above average, but considering how many new people build in full AP and get dumped on, that brings the win rate way down. So the fact that it's even above average is pretty decent, I think. Good Maokai players, for example, are getting like 58% win rates on him, so not bad. This is actually for support, jungle, and top lane at the same time, so he's doing well in all three roles. There are quite a few main things, so just to quickly cover all of them. As a jungler, the new Cinderhulk would be pretty good, right? It buffs his health, makes him even tankier. Stoneborn Pact is also 5% bonus health on top of that, right? And he's got crowd control overload in his kit, so people can heal off of everything basically. Knight's Vow is also very good right now in the meta, and Maokai can absorb like a champ. Like basically it means, yeah, sure, you can ignore him, right? He doesn't have much damage. If you do that though, he'll use loads of crowd control to annoy you and absorb damage from whoever he pairs with anyway. So the damage dealer behind him is still going to be really hard to kill. Locket is also really good. As you guys know, I talk about this all the time now. You get a bunch of health and you shield his team. Abyssal Mask, actually. Now this one is getting above this patch as well, but gives him and his team 10% more magic damage. Now that is partially really cool because, well, he does magic, but remember Knight's Vow works for AP champions as well. So you could be helping them survive and giving them more damage. Basically, in the top and jungle, he can become a super tank. He gets Knight's Vow, he gets Locket, Stone Plate, and he takes so long to kill. As a support, he's going to get some AP first and then into Locket and Knight's Vow afterwards. He's difficult to kill, but he has a bit more threat and a decent early game. Most AD carries are not that good against crowd control or killing a tank early, so Maokai kind of screws them on both of those. It is crazy, really, right? Like his Q is crowd control, W has crowd control, E has crowd control, so is his ultimate. That's a slow, 2 roots, and a knock-up. Not fun. Moving on though, one thing that tanks also bring is a new sort of meta this patch, so less skirmishy and a more team fight. They want to fight, engage, and absorb damage and cooldowns. What that actually means is, number one, the meta probably slows down a little bit. There's less damage flying around, so we have a more chill laning phase. Number two, we have more grouping, more big team fights, more 5v5 stuff. Number three sounds weird, but probably more frustrating games, or sometimes at least. Tanks have really good crowd control and engage, so if your team are idiots, they're more likely to get locked down and caught now with a tank in the game, making games actually harder sometimes. Like, I know this is weird, weird, but trust me, you'll actually feel it next patch. I do think though, AD carry is a bit more important now in the meta. Like they are the tank killers after all, right? And it'll be a case of like, if your AD is super bad, you're going to feel it way more than before. I'm not saying an AD carry can like hard carry out of nowhere now, but a bad one will be way more noticeable if that makes sense. Now saying that, because these tanks are health tanks, not really armor stacking anymore, like Warmog, Stoneplate, Locket instead of Sunfire, Random, and Stormmail, that means Blade is better, percentage damage is better, and Vayne is better. Especially for Vayne, like tanks tend to be slow and meat shields. That doesn't really work against someone like her who can kite and shred so well, but that one's pretty obvious. She does percentage health through damage. Blade isn't going to be quite as overpowered, but still better after this patch. I reckon Lucian as well gets the best out of this one, probably more than most ADs. Tank supports are back because of Locket, so these supports are the ones that fight. More fights means more chance of snowball, and aggressive ADs are better, which means Lucian is better. Lucian is going to apply that Blade percentage damage twice with his passive, so he shreds tanks even more, and Lucian can also kite tanks away when they have that Locket shield. If you think about it, to be honest, if assassins are even worse because tanks are back, then AD carry will get easier to play, right? Like at least you won't die as fast, so I'll take that. Now it's not just AD carries though, so auto-attacking junglers who use Blood Razor would be better as well for two reasons. Number one, the percentage damage, obviously actually. Number two, tanks slow the game down, so they don't have to gank as much, they can farm more, they can reach their late game items. I'm thinking kind of like Xin Zhao and Jax are the ones you might not expect to get better, but Master Yi, maybe Nocturne with an attack speed build as well. I honestly feel like Jax is really good as a jungler at low ranks especially, and now even more. Like your ganks aren't that bad, your farming is decent, especially with the dodge, and you scale like a beast. You have so much damage. Now enough tank stuff. So Kha'Zix and Shaco also get changes. Shaco got buffed and Kha'Zix got nerfed. The reason we care about those in particular is because Riot is nerfing every single carry jungler into the ground right now. Nidalee was first, I think, then Graves, Lee Sin, Rengar. It feels pretty bad if you like to play damage junglers. That means we don't really have that many really good ones left after that. So, and also Kha'Zix was one of the highest win rate carry junglers left out of the big boys anyway before this patch, and now he's getting a teamfight nerf. This might mean Lee Sin and Graves and stuff are actually better because the competition is a bit worse, but that's kind of where Shaco comes in. If he actually is better, which he should be after these buffs, he's already better actually after the first round of buffs, let alone these extra ones, then early game junglers are going to cry so much. He already beats Lee Sin, Elise, Graves, Kha'Zix because they are squishy, and he can actually like find and burst them in the jungle. You basically got like the king of crapping on carry junglers getting a buff, while the carry junglers have been getting weaker over time. That sounds like a recipe for a disaster. At least Shaco isn't that popular, right? But if you play against him, it's going to feel even worse than normal, I think. It's also an indirect buff to Jarvan, Elise, and Warwick. So Warwick is like by far the best low jungler right now, and he also beats carry junglers, especially Graves and Lee Sin. This time it is because he out tanks their damage and kills them. Plus he's way better mid to late game as well. So I think he kind of moves up to almost god tier right now after these round of nerfs. Jarvan is kind of the only reason I'm saying almost god tier though. Like he can burst Warwick down, interrupt his ultimate with his EQ, so he's one of the few who actually does consistently really well. I think really if you want to play like a damage heavy ganking jungler, Elise and Jarvan are the two left that haven't been slapped with the nerf bat, so I would go with those, but I bet you Jarvan gets nerfed soon, so abuse him while you can. I just kind of realized this is a lot about the jungle, so let's talk about these solo lanes. For mid lane, while the meta is not shifting that much, Liandry's is actually going to be much better if all of this stuff changes and health becomes way more important. It's obviously very good against health anyway with the burn, right? But it's also the spell pen. Spell pen is taken off of their magic resist, right? And if people are stacking health, then they don't have as much MR. So that means that flat pen like Liandry's is actually going to be a lot better. You'll find champions who go Morello, I think, into Liandry's are actually going to be way stronger than they were before. So this is two things, right? You've got the cooldown reduction and mana and AP, I guess, on the Morello, so you can actually spam your spells, and those more spells that you're going to be spamming will be burning for percentage damage as well. The combination together, I think, is going to be really good. Plus, if AD carries are a bit more important, then flat pen also screws them over. AD carries aren't building magic resist early, right? They don't even get it in their runes anymore for some people, so if you can hit them at the back of the fight, then you'll be doing a very good chunk of damage. So basically, Orianna and Syndra, for example, champions like that can get Morello and Liandry's together would be better this patch as their first two items at least. Plus, those two actually are mobile mages, and if we have less ganking junglers because there are more tanks and stuff, or the ganking ones are getting nerfed, that means we are safer and we're going to have higher win rates. We're talking about Liandry's as kind of a second item or like early into the game, but it's also really good as a last item if they're going to be stacking health as well. Don't get it instead of a void stuff or anything, but maybe as a last item instead of getting like something defensive. Also, champions that can get Liandry's and Rylai's together, so even more of a burn, like Malzahar and Brand, can probably cheese even more wins, to be honest, if they're against a heavy tank team. Now moving to the top lane instead, like tanks sometimes tend to cock block bruisers, so you've got two choices really, actually three. Either you hammer them really hard early and you get a massive lead, like Darius or Renekton maybe, and you stop them getting super tanky, or you outscale them kind of like Tryndamere and Yasuo and just like push and stuff, or you do both of them. Obviously, both of the options will be the best option, right? Like we're mostly looking at champions like Riven and Fiora more than anything else. These guys are so good against tanks early, even later into the game as well. Like it doesn't really matter. I think Fiora might even come back as being one of, if not the best top laner this patch. Trundle with his buff might also be really good, but he still stats, okay? And tanks are stacking health more than armor or magic resist, so it kind of makes his ultimate worse. The other option actually is to just ignore them and say, screw it, I'm gonna push. Like Tryndamere is really good against tanks, but also ignoring them. Tanks don't really have any damage, right? You can just push towers even if they're there. So he's actually really good anyway. I expect his win rate to probably jump up even more than right now, I think. Now remember to check out Opinion Outpost and leave a comment for the RP. Thank you for watching until the end, but for now, I'll leave you with the robots.